Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining us for this performance of The Importance of Being Earnest. Before we begin, there's a few safety points you must know. Firstly, in the unlikely event of an emergency, there are exits located near the front and back of the theater. Secondly, we are kindly request that all cell phones, pages, and other recording devices be turned off or put into silent mode during the performance. This is to ensure that everyone can fully enjoy the play without any distractions. Finally, we ask you to sit back, relax, and immerse yourself in Oscar Wilde's masterpiece. Our talented crew has been working hard for an unforgettable afternoon, and we are confident that you will enjoy the show. So without further ado, the lights are down, open the curtain, and I present to you The Importance of Being Earnest. Excuse me while I lay out the tea.
Did you hear what I was playing, Ray?
I didn't think it was polite to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, but for your sake, I don't play accurately. Anybody can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I leave science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the sciences of life, do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining here, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as being consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is merit so demoralizing as that?
It is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, and that was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm very interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem to be a class wholly ignorant of their moral responsibilities.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah, my dear Ernest, what brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in polite society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours. Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes. Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why, cucumber sandwiches? Such reckless extravagance in one so young. Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Gwendolen and Aunt Augusta.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all well and good, but I don't think Aunt Augusta will quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
You told me you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything very romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. Why, if ever I got married, I'd try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, let's not speculate on that matter. Divorces are made in heaven. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They were ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all this time.
Well, that's a completely different matter. She's my aunt. Here, have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
You don't need to eat it as if you're going to eat it all. You act as if you're married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you're going to have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left here the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you have had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
Well, that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say, but now that I look at the inscription inside, I realize the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
So it's perfectly ridiculous to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you told me you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes! Charming a lady she is too, lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie!
Yes, but why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter not maybe allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, Algie, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does she call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. And besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
Well, you have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you saying your name is Ernest. Here, it's on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany. I'll keep this in case you ever try to deny your name being Ernest to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that's exactly what dentists always do. Now, tell me the whole thing. I may admit that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression the second you reveal to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation. And pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle for motives of respect you could not possibly appreciate, lives with me in my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
And where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly the place is north in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear boy. I've Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, tell me, why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious now. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I've always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, in modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That won't at all be a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear boy. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do it so wonderfully in the daily paper. What you really are is a Bunburyist. In fact, you are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have created a very useful younger brother by the name of Ernest, so that you might be able to go up to the town whenever you like. I have created an invaluable, permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury, so that I might be able to sneak down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. Why, if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're so careless about sending out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I have no intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or 2. In the third place, I know exactly whom she'll place me next to tonight. She'll place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband on the other side of the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. In fact, it isn't even decent, and that sort of thing is extraordinarily on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's simply washing one's own clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a bumberist, I obviously want to talk to you about bumbering. I wanted to tell you the rules.
I am not a bumbriest at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I am going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your Mr. Bibble, but your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part ways with Bunbury. And if you do get married, which seems to me to be extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very hard time of it.
If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly wouldn't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to understand, my dear boy, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is a theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that their happy English house has proven in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It's not perfectly easy to be anything these days. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for, say, 10 minutes, so that you might have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolen, can I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you have to be serious about the thing. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope that you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I'm always smart, aren't I, Mr. Waring?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. That leaves no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I haven't been to see her since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised her.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwendolen, won't you come sit over here?
I'm quite comfortable where I am, Mama.
Lynn, why are there no cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers down at the market, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed about there being no cucumbers, Aunt Augusta. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I heard her hair turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed color, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite the treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It is delightful to watch them.
I am afraid to say, Aunt Augusta, that I'll have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great fall, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But I have just received a telegram. It seems that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that your Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your uncle, but he never seems to listen, at least as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. But I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said everything that they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll talk to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. The music is a great difficulty, however. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. If one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program I've drawn up for you if you'll kindly come with me into the next room.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think them improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and I think it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mama.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always fear it means something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
Well, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of suddenly appearing back into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact. And I often wish, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always been an irresistible fascination. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals, a fact that is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the more provincial pulpits, or so I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There's something in the name that strikes absolute confidence. Ever since Algernon first told me he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, have very little reference to the actual facts of life as we know them.
To speak quite candidly, darling, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It produces a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I must say, I think there are a lot of other, much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. produces absolutely no vibration. And besides, I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. And Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman married to a man called John. She must never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only safe name really is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must be christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you, that you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, you are not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, darling, but you've yet to propose to me yet. Nothing at all to be said about marriage. The subject has yet to be touched upon.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, I think it's only fair to tell you beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen?
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you still don't say it.
Gwendolen? 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 Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long have you been about it? I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
Well, I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me about it. What blue eyes you have, Annie. Quite blue. I hope you'll always look at me like that, especially when other people are present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
I must beg of you to retire, Mamma. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has yet to finish.
Finish what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are nothing of the kind. When you do become engaged, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. Marriage should come as a surprise to a young girl, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
The carriage, Gwendolen! Gwendolen! The carriage! You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, though I share the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle young men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a young man who desires to be married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, it produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it might prove a serious danger to the upper classes and could lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death? Land ceases to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, I do have a country house, or some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe, but I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only ones who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Well, that matter can be cleared up afterwards. You do have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let to the year by Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at a 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham, I don't know her.
She goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Oh, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number, Belgrave Square?
149.
I thought there was something, the unfashionable side. Well, that can easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the size?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I have none. I am a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or at least come in the evening at any rate. And now, on to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, could be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in, as the radical papers say, the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. You see, Lady Bracknell, I said I have lost both my parents, but it would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an elderly gentleman of a charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag, a somewhat large, black leather handbag, but with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
The Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess to feeling somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the French Revolution, and we all know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloak at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has indeed probably been used for that purpose before now, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
As ask you then what you advise me to do, Lady Bracknell. I need hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try to acquire some relations as soon as possible and to produce at least one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce a handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that ought to satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? Sir, what has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to tell me she refused you. Gwendolen is always refusing people. It's the way she has. I think it is almost ill-natured of her.
Gwendolen is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother, on the other hand, is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. At any rate, that she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. Suppose I shouldn't talk of your own aunt in this way before you.
Oh, I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people without the remotest idea how to live, nor the smallest inclination about when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter with you. You always want to argue about things.
But that is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in 150 years or so, do you?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation of modern life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody's clever nowadays, and you can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. So what do they talk about?
Oh, the fools? Well, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
By the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to somebody else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
And what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear boy. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You best say it was a severe chill.
You're quite sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of the kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Yes, but didn't you say that Miss Cardew was a little bit too much interested in your brother? Won't she take his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly, romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays absolutely no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolen yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
One doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. Did you know it is already nearly 7?
It's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Well, what should we do after dinner? Go to the theatre?
Oh, no, I loathe listening.
Well, then let us go to the club.
Oh, no, I hate talking.
Well, we could trot round the Empire at 10.
I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's an awful lot of hard work to do nothing, though I don't mind work when there is no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax!
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algernon, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Webb.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algernon, you always adopt such a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You're not quite old enough to do that yet.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But, although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
My dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to be by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name is an irresistible fascination, and the simplicity of your character is exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your address in the Albany I have, but what is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Walton, Hertfordshire.
There's a good postal service there, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will take serious consideration. I'll communicate with you daily.
I own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Algie, you may turn your back now.
Yeah, I turned round already.
And you may ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bumbering.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can put up my smoking jacket, my dress suits, and all the bumbering coats.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow is a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Why, Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There is a sensible, intellectual girl, the only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Well, I'm just a bit worried about old Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
Well, I love scrapes. They're the only things in life that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.